am finally back. I am super sorry that it's taken so long, but I have a bit of a hectic life. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Caitlin, and today we are going to pick back up with our story. We're going to talk about my pregnancy, high-risk pregnancy. So just a quick recap, we did IVF. We found out that we were having triplets, and we had our very first doctor's appointment where we found out that we were having triplets. So we found out we were having triplets and immediately knew that I was going to have a high-risk pregnancy. So at our very first doctor's appointment, when we found out, we actually, so my doctor is a maternal fetal medicine specialist, and he owns a midwifery. So the way that his model works is that for a normal pregnancy, you see one of the midwives, and then if you have something that's high risk, you see him. Usually he does things, he specializes in like VBACs, things like that you don't necessarily need, you don't necessarily need him for the babies, but to be able to have that option, a lot of doctors don't do VBACs. I actually also had been lucky enough, his office was the ones who did my monitoring when we did IVF, so I had actually been with them from the very beginning. And because they were doing my monitoring, I was having the ultrasounds with them already. So I would go, they would do the ultrasounds, and then he would read them and all of that. So I was already kind of established with them. So the day that we had our first ultrasound, we go and we got to talk to him that day also. And my very first question was, could I still have a vaginal delivery? And my doctor's really big on like long answer, short answer. And so he's like, basically short answer is yes. Long answer is like, you have to get to, I think he told me I had to get to 36 weeks and babies had to be in a good position. A quick half of a Google search told me that I would not be having a vaginal delivery. There are some triplet moms who do actually have a vaginal delivery, but there were just way too many risks for me. I had already lost so much. We had already gone through so much, put so much money into this, that basically I was not taking any extra risks. And a vaginal delivery just had way too many risks for me. So that was quickly decided that we were not going to have that. The one thing that I tell people, I feel like me knowing that I was having triplets, I had 30 weeks to prepare myself. Things like immediate skin to skin, delayed cord clamping, and immediate nursing. Those were all things that were really important to me that I really wanted. But having triplets, I probably wasn't going to get them. If I had made it long enough, if the babies were big enough, if their lungs were developed, then of course my doctor would have been all for it. But with triplets, you just never know. Like you don't know when they're gonna come. Things can change on a dime, and I'll explain later, but they did for me. So with a triplet pregnancy, I went to the doctor a lot. I counted a few minutes ago. I think that I counted 25 ultrasounds that I had. I only made it to 30 weeks. That's almost an average of an ultrasound a week, which for me, I really enjoyed because I've been through so much, that being able to see them gave, like, I just had that assurance that they were okay. Normally, if you have a normal pregnancy, like people get max like 4 or 5 ultrasounds. So 25 was a little excessive, but they really have to check. They have to make sure that your cervix is not shortening, that you're not dilating, all of those things to keep the baby safe. So I was okay with it. Like I said, I got to see their heartbeats. I got to see them, see that they were okay. So it really calmed a lot of my anxiety that I had. That's another thing. Having a triplet pregnancy, first of all, having lost 3 pregnancies before, I would have had crazy anxiety whether I was having triplets or one. You just never know what's going to happen. You never expect that it's going to happen to you. And then when it does, it's like you can't get past it. So I had serious anxiety. And honestly, I guess I didn't really have anxiety as it went, but it was because I built a wall. And I did not realize until after my girls were born, how big of a wall I had put up. This is going to skip ahead a little bit, but so my girls were in the NICU for about 2 months and then came home. And I think it was about a month, maybe 2 later, I will never forget, I was holding somebody. I don't know why, nothing happened, but just out of the blue, it hit me that the girls were here and they weren't going anywhere. And I realized how big of a wall I had put up. I had just been waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was still in this mindset that they were not going to be with us forever. And that was a serious gut punch. I felt guilty. I felt like I was not fully present. I feel like I was guarding myself for the possibility that they weren't going to be with me forever. And I really was mad that I had done that. But having had my history, I really don't think that there was any way around it. So back to the pregnancy, I developed this wall, and I guess that I was laying the foundation, building the entire pregnancy. Because in the beginning I was kind of anxious, and then I got to 8 weeks and I was still pregnant. They were still doing well. And I got to 10 weeks, and it just, I feel like the further I got, the more I was trying to guard myself, because if something happened later and later, that would have been even harder for me. I think, I don't know because it hasn't happened, so I can't say for sure, but I definitely was building this wall my entire pregnancy. So I had the 30 weeks, though, to be able to prepare myself. I knew that I probably wasn't going to get to nurse. I knew that I probably wasn't going to get to do skin to skin or delayed clamping. The best that I had was that my doctor swore and promised that if the girls were okay, I would get it. But in my head, I guess I just kind of knew, honestly, my plan for my pregnancy, was to make no plans. I'll never forget, I went in, towards the very end of my pregnancy, I should have had a plan. And my ultrasound tech asked, I was like, so do you have your birth plan written out? And I was like, nope. And she's like, Caitlin, you really need to. And I was like, my plan is to have no plan so that my plans can't be ruined. Because as soon as I make a plan, and as soon as I set my heart on something, something's going to happen and I'm not going to get it. So that's my plan, is to not make plans. And she looked at me and she was like, okay, well, Dr. B is really big on your birth plan. So if he asks, you just need to tell him, yes, you have a plan. So, I just feel like my entire pregnancy, I was trying to protect myself. And I really do feel like I'm lucky that I knew ahead of time, because I knew that my girls were going to go to the NICU. Most moms who go to the NICU, who have a baby that goes to the NICU, majority of those don't know. The majority of those don't know they're going to go into early labor and have a baby at 27, 28, 30, 32, 34 weeks that's going to the NICU. And so you're in this moment expecting that you're going to make it much closer to 40 weeks, and then you're at 30 weeks having a baby, and that baby's being rushed to the NICU, and you had no clue. Those people have no way to plan for that, and I did. So I think that really, really helped me. I just kind of set that I knew that they were going to the NICU. So that really helped me. Well, I really had a pretty uneventful pregnancy in the very beginning. My body really carried triplets really well. So at every appointment, they'll check they checked my cervix to make sure that it was good and long and it wasn't funneling or starting to shorten or dilate or any of those things. And really, my cervix never, it was always really good. I didn't have to have a cerclage or anything. So I did really well up until about 22 weeks. And I by no means did not do well after 20 weeks, but it was like my energy, like I hit a wall. I'm a pediatric speech therapist, and the majority of my caseload is kids with special needs. So, and young. So I was like in the floor a lot. It's just, I wasn't just like sitting there. So that was hard. And I worked up until 24, 25 weeks. But at about 22 weeks, I think a huge part of it was that my iron dropped. And it was like I had just like slammed into a wall. I had no more energy. So really that was around where my pregnancy started getting harder. So that was around 24, 25 weeks would have been around Christmas. So when I took off for Christmas, I just didn't go back to work afterwards. And then I had a little bit of excitement. So at the first week in January, I was 26 weeks, I think. 25 or 26 weeks. And we had my baby shower. And then I had a lot of family come in. All of my mom and dad's family live in Mississippi. And then my husband's are in Tennessee. So a lot of family came to town for our shower. And after the shower, I wanted to kind of walk around and look. We were in a cute little town. It had cute little shops and things. So we wanted to walk around and go into the shops and look around. So I was about to say I did a lot of walking, but it was not a lot of walking. But for having triplets, I already was having like a lot of contractions. If I was up and moving a lot and like walking a lot, I was getting a lot of contractions. It was okay. They weren't, like my cervix wasn't changing. Nothing was progressing. It was just my body's way of reacting. So normally like the more your uterus is irritated, it'll start to contract. And I had 3 babies like rapidly expanding. So my uterus was like pretty irritated with me. And so I would have contractions pretty regularly. But so I started having a lot of contractions. I just like, I couldn't breathe at that point. Like I had no lung capacity, everything, like they were crushing every organ in my body. And so I started having a lot of pain. So I can't remember, maybe like 2 or 3 days after, oh no, it was 2. So my shower was on a Saturday, and then Tuesday, so I had been having this pain, and it was really weird. It was like really low. We didn't think that it was round ligament pain, but it was just like excruciating pain. And so it finally got to the point where it was so bad that I had Chris. I tried to get in touch with my doctor. I couldn't. And I was like, look, we're going to labor and delivery. It hurts. I cannot do this right now. And I wanted to be sure that the babies were safe. So like in the back of my mind, I knew that I wasn't in labor. My water hadn't ruptured, like my membranes hadn't ruptured, like nothing, but it was bad. So we went into the hospital, went to labor and delivery, and Lord. So my doctor had not seen me, and I was a pretty like laid back pregnant person. I didn't like run to him with every single little thing. Like, I was pretty good at like, Caitlin, things, your body is changing very quickly. Like, things are happening. They're gonna feel scary. You're okay. So I really didn't call him unless like I really thought something was going on. So I couldn't get in touch with him. So I went to labor and delivery. They put monitors on the baby and like checked their heartbeats. And then the nurse was like, we talked to your doctor. He said you can go. And I was like, no, I can't. Like, something's not right. So this nurse, like, she came in, she was like, well, he discharged you. Like, you're already been discharged. And I was like, what? So by the grace of God, there is a nurse who works on, I think she was in labor and delivery, and she had triplets. And she had a very similar story to mine. And I guess when we got there, they told her that I was there and that I was having triplets. So by the grace of God, she came by after they were like, go home. And she could tell that I was like a nervous wreck. I was crying. Like, I was so nervous that something was wrong. They had heard the heartbeats. That was all they had done. They didn't look at the babies. They didn't check my cervix. They didn't do an ultrasound to see what my cervix was doing. Like, nothing. So, of course, I'm like, this is not right. Like, I do not feel comfortable going home. So when she came, she talked to me. She was like, there's like, just tell them you're not comfortable. You would at least like for your doctor to come and see you so that he can see like what you're doing, what you look like now compared to your normal. So because of her, thank goodness, they ended up keeping me. The other nurse that was trying to get me to go home, like, if Catherine hadn't come in, I probably would have gone home. Because you're just kind of in like a helpless situation. You don't know what to do. You don't want to like talk back or argue. But I'm so thankful that she came, because I actually ended up being in the hospital for like 4 days maybe. And it was pretty scary. Like, there basically was like nothing that they could do. At that time, they did go ahead and give me magnesium and steroid shots. So magnesium is for neural development, so it helps develop the brain. And steroids is for lung development and helps to mature the lungs. So that if something did happen and the babies came early, I would have that on board and they would hopefully be better. So my mom was there one night, and I know they were doing the magnesium and the steroids, and then I think they were doing like pain medications, like as however often you could do them, and it was not helping. I was like constantly like crying, moaning, like I was trying to breathe as best I could, and like they weren't doing anything. Like, nobody would come in, and my mom obviously got so scared at one point that she looked at me and was like, Caitlin, if somebody doesn't come in here within the next however many minutes, like, I'm taking you to a different hospital. Like, something is not right. So we never really figured out what it was. It eased up, so it was okay. And like I said, I ended up going home 4 days later. But after that, my doctor put me on strict bed rest. Like, he was like, look, like, I've told you to slow down, nothing now. So I ended up going to my parents' house. But okay, Chris worked before we had the babies. Chris worked in Warner Robins, which is like 2 hours from where we lived. So his commute every day was like 2 hours to work and 2 hours home from work. So I would have been home by myself, and that wasn't safe. So I went to my parents' house so that somebody was there in case something happened. Y'all, I don't know how people have quads, quints, sextuplets. I do not know how you physically don't explode, because that's what it felt like. I could not get comfortable. Like I just felt like I was constantly trying to find a position that I could just be comfortable, not even feel good, just not miserable. I got to the point where I was like spending the entire day in the bathtub just to try to like relieve some of the pressure, like take some of the pressure off of my body. It was hard, and I only made it to 30 weeks, and I have friends who have like made it to 36 weeks. I do not know how you do it. But I will also say that I was super small. I feel like my belly like never really popped out. And I think that made it worse. I feel like if they would have just popped out, there wouldn't have been quite so much pressure on everything. But it was like they were just so compact, and like Hayes was up in my rib. It was not fun. So that happened. And then around about 27 weeks, between 26 and 27 weeks, we went in for a normal appointment, and I have a clotting factor, which during pregnancy you can easily develop blood clots. So this was like really stressing me out, because the further along you go, the higher your hormone goes, the easier you can develop blood clots. So I was really stressing out because we hadn't done any cord flow, looked at their cord flow yet. So by chance at this doctor's appointment, I was like, hey, when will y'all start looking at their cord flow? I'm really nervous about it because I've got factor 5. And so I was just wondering when we were going to start looking for that. And she's like, oh, you haven't done it yet? And I was like, no. So luckily she went ahead that day, pulled it out, and baby A, my little peanut, her cord flow was actually not good. She had what's called intermittent absent inflow. So the way that they get all of the blood and nutrients to their bodies through their umbilical cord. So your umbilical cord pulses like your heartbeat would. And so every pulse, hers was pausing in between. So the doctor explained it like if you're breathing and you like hold your breath, take a breath, breathe out, hold your breath, breathe in, breathe out, hold your breath, that eventually gets super tiresome, and you're not getting the correct amount of nutrients that you need. And that doesn't get better usually. It usually just progresses from intermittent. So intermittent, it was not happening every single time, to absent inflow where it's not, and then reverse flow where it's taking blood and nutrients from the baby back up to the placenta, and not from the placenta to the baby. So that was not good. I don't think that it would have been as concerning, but Presley and Millie are identical, and they shared a placenta. And both of them like dropped off of their growth curve. So they had all three of the girls had been really close to like their correct gestational age, based on measurements and things up until that point. So the prior appointment, they were, I think, about a pound a piece. And Hayes might have been like an ounce or two ahead of them. But they were all pretty close and all within the average range or within normal limits for their gestational age. And at this appointment, Hayes had gained a full pound, and Millie and Presley had only gained about half a pound. So because they had dropped off of that, and Presley was having the intermittent absent inflow, my doctor, he was like, you need to pack your bags. Like, what's going to happen is you're going to come in for an appointment one day, and the cord flow is not going to be good, and I'm going to tell you to go from here to the hospital. So you need to pack your bags, and you need to bring them with you to your appointments. I didn't do that. I didn't pack anything. Y'all, I did not even have clothes for the hospital. my mom and I had to go to Target. I was on bed rest, and we had to go to Target. I was probably like 28, 29 weeks pregnant at that point. Listen to your doctors, pack your bags. So that happened, and he went from doing, I think I was at weekly appointments at that point, to twice a week. And like from then, he also said, like, I really don't think you're gonna make it 2 more weeks. Like, usually when this happens, like within 2 weeks is when we see. So I made it to 30 weeks though. I made it 3 weeks. So we continued the twice a week appointments, making sure that my cervix was good, making sure their fluid was good, and making sure that their cord flow was good. So everything stayed pretty consistent, and they were doing really well. And at 29 weeks and 6 days, I went in for an appointment. Everything looked great. Everything was perfect. And then the next day it was not. And that is where my labor and delivery story will start. So, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And catch us next time.